Okay, so there are three main worldviews with which South Africans have to contend for the most part. Those are African traditional belief systems, Islam, okay, although the Muslims percentage-wise represent a small group of people in South Africa in comparison to the other groups. In terms of influence, the influence is amazing. So we have to deal with that, and everybody globally is dealing with the challenge of Islam. And then I'm going to talk about the third worldview driving South Africa, which is a kind of a shape-shifting kind of sneaky thing, and it's difficult to put a name on it, so I'm going to name it. I'm just going to call it cultural Marxism, okay? And you're going to go, why does he call it that? Hopefully by the end of the session, you'll see why it is that I call this thing cultural Marxism. It is a secular worldview with an atheistic basic foundation. All right, so this is all also tied to a talk that I give called The Journey of a South African Matric Student, where I basically show to parents and pastors what actually happens to your kids when they leave a Christian school and they end up in the university, or even if they don't end up in the university, on the culture, because they leave high school with their matric certificate, they arrive at universities, but beware, look at the ghosts in the background there, the ghosts of the philosophers, because they're going to come and get you. And so your beautiful young daughter or young Christian man ends up at Stellenbosch or UCT, and they come back home and they look like that. Okay. Now, to the older people, they're going, what? To the younger people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to understand the times, we're going to come to terms with the worldview of our age, and I'm going to demonstrate that this worldview, sadly, is instrumental in shipwrecking the faith or destroying the faith of many young people. Okay, so something is going on. Something is going on in our society. We saw that with the Nike ad and the other things, and we're living in a time when we're all being expected to believe things, some of which believe are false, and then there's a pressure that comes on for you to conform and to abandon your old convictions and go with these new ideas, and often there's a threat that comes with that. So you lack the courage perhaps to say something at work because you're in a DEI meeting, training session, and you're going, well, I don't really believe what they're saying, but I'm just going to be quiet. Okay, so where are these kinds of demands and prescriptions being made? Is this the future of women's athletics? We've already visited this. It's happening in education with new concepts, from the gender unicorn to the genderbread person. What's that all about? Our toilets now have to have new symbols on them because apparently there's 70-something genders. So we need new symbols to help us. What is that thing on the right-hand side? When the woman of the year is a bloke, as I said, then maybe you've been forced to believe something you don't believe to be true. And I'm not trying to dismiss the fact that there are people who struggle with their sexuality and their sexual identity. That is certainly the case. We've known about that. But there's something more going on in the culture, and we ought not to be naive to it. We're even having to modify our language now to accommodate this new thing in town. So old terminology and definitions are being thrown to the ground and cast out because they're oppressive. It's no longer breastfeeding, it's chest feeding, because men can have babies as well. The medical jargon is being changed to conform with this worldview of philosophy. And don't think to yourself for a moment, it's not happening here in South Africa. You'll be wrong. Our athletes are being used to make the arguments. Our politicians and academics are also bending the knee and raising the fist, and they're quoting the same scholars and referring to the same literature. Much of all of it is right there in that beautiful little toxic pile right there. Okay. These are the main books, most of them, governing our country. This movement was involved with the taking down of statues, but the first country to start taking down statues was this country, which was the first university to take a statue down. Which one? No. Northwest University. You know the conservative school down the road? Tertius used to stand outside the law faculty. He got the boot before everybody else did. Okay. When your university is messing around with pronouns, be rest assured that this worldview is in town. This is Stellenbosch University putting up the new signs on the toilet. I got given this from students of mine. Or maybe if you're at the University of Pretoria, the university has to coach you on how to use all of the new pronouns, z's and zers and zems. Because this is the enlightened, this is the socially responsible way now to bring about justice in our society. If you're in the corporate world and you think you're not affected by this, you're wrong, because if you're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training, you're also drinking from the pond of this worldview. And if you're a matric graduate and you're mucking around with the concept of androgyny and you become a social media hero, you're also trafficking in this stuff. And don't think it's not affecting black culture. How about this from News 24? Eastern Cape teen who lives as trans woman to undergo traditional initiation into manhood. Yeah. So don't tell me this is not happening in South Africa. It's happening everywhere. Notice the ghosts of Judith Butler standing there. I have her there for good reason. We shall visit Judith later in the talk. And we have our first lawsuits unfolding now in the Western Cape. Beaumont Primary School and Stellenbosch High School. Those court cases are underway. Not in Canada, not in New Zealand, not in Scandinavia, down in the Western Cape. And you need to ask yourself, well, why the Western Cape? Yeah, ask yourself that question, why the Western Cape? So it's even happening on the cricket field. Now we all like a good game of cricket, do we not? Okay, but you don't get to play cricket unless you do something. Now, some of them are quite confident that it's all about black lives, so that they take the knee and raise the fist confidently, and some will kind of raise their fist, and others will kind of look like they've just been scolded by their mother, and some won't get to play. That's the coercion part. Notice, some are like, okay, well, something's going on, something's happening. That's where most South Africans are. You're just like the cricket team. Some confidently take the knee and say, this is what it's about. And some are going, well, I'm not so sure, but I really notice that. And Douglas Murray, in this very helpful book, by the way, I encourage you to read. He's a secular guy, so I disagree with him, but I learned a lot from him. He says, we're going through a great crowd arrangement in public and in private. Both online and off, people are behaving in ways that are increasingly irrational, feverish, herd-like, and simply unpleasant. The daily news cycle is filled with the consequences. Yet while we see the symptoms everywhere, we do not see the causes. You see the symptoms everywhere, and we do not know how we got here. What is causing this stuff? So what we're going to do is we're going to unmask this thing. I'm going to take the mask of this thing. And it's quite easy to do, because the way to understand amongst human beings how they act or what they're doing is to dig down and find out what ideas they have. We're rational beings. We act in accordance with the ideas. And ideas can manifest in different ways. So these guys had an idea that led to that contraption, and then we got some of these. This man's got some ideas, okay? This led to electric cars. We might want some more of those with the price of fuel in our country. This guy had a pretty rotten idea, and this guy took that idea way too seriously, and we had a little bit of that. Ideas have consequences. Worldviews matter. Do they matter now? Oh, you betcha. This man had some rubbish ideas, and people take him way too seriously even today. And this man and that man took those ideas way too seriously, and we had a little bit of this and some of that. This man's ideas affected the Americans during the civil rights movement. This man's ideas had a profound effect on the people of India, and we're all living in the hangover of this man's ideas. Who is that? Yeah, it's interesting. I do this talk for the young people in South Africa. Most young South Africans have got very strong opinions of an apartheid. They don't even know who this guy is. Interesting, hey? So how do we end up in a situation where you go to university and people talk about, oh, language is a form of oppression? How do we get there? I'll tell you how we get there. We are where we are in South Africa to a large extent because these are the people who run your lives. And most of you don't even know who they are. It's not Cyril. It's not the ANC party. It's not the DA. It's not even the EFF or any of them. That's not how it works, folks. It's not how it works. Politics is downstream from the academy. The ideas that the lawyers and the politicians and the media get, they come from the universities. It's at that level where the ideas come, they seed it into the minds of the political leaders, and then they cash it out for you. Politics is downstream from the academy. And these are the people who write the books that train up the next generation of lawyers and political leaders. And they are running the show. Because if our discourse, our policies are shaped not by our I can believe you me, Jacob Zuma had nothing to do with this. And neither did Cyril. These ideas we see and concepts about human nature and society do not come from our political leaders. It comes from these. It comes from the academic intelligentsia. I have a few up here. They focus in different areas. But this one's important because the one in the orange trim, I have Herbert Marcuse discipling Angela Davis or mentoring her, arguably the most famous black feminist in the world. Why is it important? Because if you read their literature, you'll find out that they're not bringing anything new to the table philosophically. They don't have a new philosophy to offer you. The philosophy that offer you is built squarely and ironically on top of the shoulders of white European men, the very people we're meant to avoid, apparently. Isn't that ironic? It's a combination of Marxism mixed with French existentialism born out of German idealism. So much for decolonization. It's just more German idealism. That's what it is. Where? Everywhere. Everywhere. So I have in the red trim, we have Karl Marx with a beard there. We have Antonio Gramsci next to him. We're going to talk about him. But the top three boxes there are the fathers of the Frankfurt School. We're going to talk a bit about them. What do they have in common? They're all Marxists. On the bottom here, in the blue trim, we have our French existentialists. They're the people you use to undermine the concept of truth as you feed somebody some French existential nonsense. Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, Franz Letard, and of course the most famous, Jean-Paul Sartre himself. I have Frantz Fanon there because people will say, well, what about Frantz Fanon? I've read Frantz Fanon's book. He's got two books. This is his most famous, The Wretched of the Earth. And if you read his book, whilst he's ethnically African, philosophically, there's nothing African about him. He's a thoroughgoing, old-school Bolshevik Marxist with a dash of French existentialism. The foreword to his book is written by Jean-Paul Sartre. So whilst he's ethnically African, philosophically, there's nothing African there. So what we do, we can pick a contemporary scholar like Angela Davis, read their works, and just follow the ideas, trail down the hill, and you can find out where this all bottoms out. And ultimately, much of it bottoms out here with Karl Marx. So for those of you who want to understand, and when you know something of Karl Marx, he believed he had happened across a philosophy in which he understood societies and why there was oppression in society. And he believed if we just followed his philosophy, we could make everybody equal. Because it was causing the disparity between people was because there were people who controlled the means of production and people who didn't. And so the people who controlled the means of production, the capitalists, would then basically enslave these people. And so ultimately this tension, this dialectical tension between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat would end up in a revolution, and ultimately it would lead us towards the dictatorship of the proletariat. That's why you have the hammer and sickle, okay? Because communism is the expression of Marxist philosophy in which the agricultural guys and the artisans would rise up and bring about an equal society and make everybody equal by taking away property, title, and profit. That's classic Marxism. But of course, Marx didn't bring anything new to the table. He was a social philosopher. He was a young Hegelian. He basically built his ideas off of Hegel, and Hegel was the one who came up with this idea of historicism. That is, as society is moving through the course of history, okay, there's a development of the individual consciousness as we move through that process on this historical journey. And alongside this concept of historicism is the dialectic. And then in society, we have opposing ideas. And as these ideas conflict with each other, new things emerge out of it in this historical development. And so you might have heard this kind of idea, the thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Have you heard of that before? Okay, that's actually from Fichte. That's not from Hegel. All right, but Hegel had his own dialectic with abstract and negation. The negation, you negate the abstract out of which the concrete emerges. And this is his views of social philosophy, of how society works in this perpetual dialectical tension that exists. Marx comes along and he takes this whole thing, but he's an atheist. So he has the historicism plus the dialectics, but he's a materialist. He's an atheist because there was too much spiritual mumbo jumbo in Hegel there. He purged it of that. And he believed that ultimately it's a class and economic war that's going on. And so he takes the dialectic here, and he has the two sides, the opposing sides, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, which clash, out of which you get the revolution. And so you move from feudalism to capitalism to socialism to communism and on into utopia. But Marx also had a rotten idea about religion, which he gets from Feuerbach. This is Feuerbach's work here. There's my Communist Manifesto copy, and there's this book. It was Freud who had the idea that religion is a projection of the mind. Feuerbach, not Freud. Freud gets this from Feuerbach. And this is the book, ironically titled The Essence of Christianity, which it certainly isn't. And so that affected Marx's and many others' ideas that religion, when these secular people looked at us as religious people, they were going to psychologize us and figure us out and diagnose us. Marx said this, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. What does opium do to you? It dulls your faculties. What does religion in general and Christianity do to you? It dulls your faculties. It puts you in a stupor to be exploited by the capitalists. And so we can liberate people by disabusing them from their Christian false projection of the mind, to remove them from their false consciousness and raise them up to have a critical consciousness. Who's heard of the word woke? That's just what woke is. Now, I would have asked an audience of people here tonight, who's heard of woke? And you would have all put your hands up and said, I've heard of it. And if I asked you, what does it mean? You couldn't tell me. You now know what it is. It's a shift to get you from where you are to start thinking like what? Like Karl Marx. That's just what it means. These people are intoxicated with this philosophy. And worse than this, they're lying to all you black brothers and sisters because they're telling you this is a great act of decolonization, which it certainly isn't. It's just more Hegelian dialectical madness. That's what this is. Think about this. This is George Lukács, arguably the father of Western Marxism. This is his book, the History of Class Consciousness. What did he say about this? The true method by which to understand society has finally been discovered. Thank you, Carl. Finally, we now have a philosophy that can explain all of our problems. And it comes from Karl Marx. And by that method alone. History. Marx never gets to see his philosophy implemented. We have to wait till 1917, in the middle of the First World War, when the Bolshevik Party decides to have a revolution on the poor Russians when they're on their knees. It gets implemented in 1917. But then, of course, as these Marxists are so intoxicated with this whole development in Russia, because they're excited that maybe this great revolution will spill across into Europe and we all have this Marxist glorious society, it wasn't happening. And so then they're saying, well, maybe Marx's theory was good, but it wasn't broad enough. And so along comes Antonio Gramsci in his works, the Prison Notebooks, where these young Marxist intellectuals say, well, maybe we can expand Marx's critique because it's too narrow. Because Europe's not having the revolution, and Marx said it should, because his philosophy is science. It's true. And he had this idea of hegemony, which if you're in the social sciences in any university, you can have heard this word. What is this idea all about? He believed that the consent to rule of the dominant group is achieved by the spread of ideologies, belief, assumptions, values through social institutions such as schools, churches, courts, and media, amongst others. These institutions do the work of socializing people into the norms, values, and beliefs of the dominant social group. As such, the group that controls the institutions controls the rest of society. Now, I think he's right. You control the institutions in society, you control what's going to happen in that society. So if you want a certain political outcome, which is revolution, you've got to go upstream into the cultural institutions where the ideas are, all the way to where they come from, and have a cultural revolution first. Cultural Marxism. It's morphed now from Karl Marx's more crass version thereof. It's become more sophisticated now. I would argue that Antonio Gramsci is the father of woke. How does it work? You go to the three institutions where people traffic in ideas: family, religious institutions, or the church and the university. You capture those three, you get the rest. It's very simple. And we know that this is what they were up to because Gramsci said it. Socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media, by transforming the consciousness of society, by making you all woke. There it is, folks. Now, I wish this was some conspiracy theory, but it isn't. This is what's going on in our country. We are all in the middle of a cultural Marxist revolution. And it's captured our universities and many other institutions. And what's worse is they're trying to pass it off as decolonization. And as I understand decolonization, whatever you say about it, is the getting rid of Eurocentric thinking. There's no getting rid here. It's out with colonialism and it's in with the dialectical madness of Hegel. Just make sure you add Ubuntu on the end of the sentence so the black brothers and sisters can be comfortable. Yeah, that be the game. That's what's going on. These people lying to these students that I've worked with in KZN, and they're studying law, black students asking the professors, hang on a sec here, you talk about African philosophy, so where's the African philosophy here? Don't answer the question. Evasive. They're lying to you. This is what's going on at the bottom here. This is what's above. You capture the university, the church, and the family, you get the rest. It's a Trojan horse, folks. It's a Trojan horse. Now, you've never heard this stuff before because they don't feed it like this to you. Here's how it typically is going to get fed to you.
We're never alone. And that is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one. When we're held back, we'll go farther and harder. If we're not taken seriously, we'll prove that wrong. And if we don't fit the sport, we'll change the sport. We know things won't always go our way.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But whatever it is,
Turn the volume
we'll find a way.
Nice and high. Loud. Make it
And
loud.
when things aren't fair,
Feel that.
we'll come together for change.
Powerful.
We have a responsibility
To make this world a better place.
And no matter how bad it gets, we will always come back stronger. Because nothing can stop what we can do together.
Wow. I thought you were trying to sell me some tackies and some stretchy pants. I guess not. Who's against you, Nike? Who's the us versus them in the infernal dialectic, the bourgeoisie proletarian? If we can't fit the sport, we'll change it. And there's always the rainbow flag and the token Muslim, because nobody wants to say anything to offend the Muslims. Is it not? The BLM, the bending of the knee, the same jargon, the same ideas. This is how it's fed to you. Not by giving into some, let me explain Hegel's dialectical historical material. People fall asleep. I'm trying to keep you awake tonight. This is how you feed it to people. And they bite down on it, even if you're not at university, and young people. If you think that a young matric can come out of our schools now and has got something in them to filter this, I haven't seen it. It is so subversive. How do we get here? How do we arrive here? Fairly simple. You go to universities, and it takes a university to disabuse you of your common sense and good reason. That's what happens. How does it happen? It's quite straightforward. University does one thing. They undermine the concept of truth. How do they undermine the concept of truth? They feed you a bunch of French existentialism. Technically, this is what's happening. Remember, when you leave school in South Africa, you don't have any training in philosophy. I don't care whether you've done a Cambridge curriculum or any one of these curriculums out there. You don't have a philosophical foundation. So when you get to university, particularly if you're in the social sciences, they've got to give you a philosophical foundation on which to do higher level education, a theoretical foundation. And they don't say, well, yeah, study the history of philosophy, wrestle with the great philosophers and decide for yourself which are the good foundations on which to build your ideas. No. They don't want you to do that. They want to feed you very specifically this. They want to feed you critical constructivist epistemology, which is a theory of knowledge that emphasizes knowledge as a social and cultural construction shaped by specific context and power dynamics rather than objective truths. It extends constructivism by integrating a critical epistemology of the Frankfurt School. Those were those chaps I just told you about. They're the ones who provided us the philosophy, which posits that knowledge is not neutral but serves a certain interest and can sustain oppressive structures. This approach encourages critical awareness, challenges dominant viewpoints, and aims to provide social justice by exposing and questioning the power imbalances embedded in how knowledge is produced and disseminated. Where is that happening at our universities? Everywhere. This is the philosophy and the ideology that they're feeding to all the young people. And that's why you get that. That's the philosophy associated with that. That's how this happens. So we're being specific now. Critical theory comes from the Frankfurt School, but we have all of these new departments in which in law you teach critical race theory or critical discourse analysis and linguistics or critical pedagogy. That's the nonsense of the Paulo Freire, the Brazilian. This book here, this little paperback book, governs philosophy of education in our universities from the top down. Third most quoted book in the social sciences. DEI in the corporate world, and on it goes. What's going on here ultimately is you go into a secular institution and you're going to be dealing with things at this level on a theoretical down, dealing with metaphysics and epistemology, which ultimately shapes your ethics. And on the one side, you're going to have this when you've actually been raised as a Christian with this. And those two things are mutually exclusive. On that side, you're going to be taught all of these isms. Moral relativism, nihilism, antinomianism, liberation ethics, toxic empathy, skepticism, relativism, postmodernism, social constructivism is the main thing in social sciences. Standpoint epistemology, that's just fancy words for lived experience thinking. Okay. And on the other side there, you've been taught this as a Christian. Those things are at odds with each other. Fundamental level. It's a philosophical and it's a worldview issue, folks, and it has to do with epistemology. How do we come to know things? And we know very specifically what the philosophy is. It's born out of German idealism, from Kant idealism, and we go all the way through to you don't know reality, you only know it as it appears to you. What's true for me is true for me, what's true for you is true for you. And the person who best captures that philosophy will be Friedrich Nietzsche with his perspectivism. I quoted him in the earlier lecture on truth. His view on truth is because he's subscribed to a particular epistemology, which is perspectivism, is the philosophical position that one's access to the world through perception and experience and reason is possible only through one's own perspective and interpretation. It rejects both the idea of perspective-free or interpretation-free objective reality. That's what you just said. Oh, that's just your interpretation. Oh, that's just your interpretation. Oh, that's just your opinion. Who are you to force your mind? That's just Nietzsche speaking through you. And when you abandon truth, there's consequences for that. Because truth, interestingly, is also related to beauty. And when you abandon philosophy, you end up with ugliness, a culture of ugliness. It's no surprise that it was in 1917 that Michel Duchamp hung his urinal from the ceiling. When the Marxists were that. And so what we've done is we've exchanged Tracy Emin's sordid bed, which is in the Tate Gallery, with Michelangelo's Pietà. This statement I'm making here now would cause a riot on a university campus. How dare he say that? This is enlightenment. This is forward thinking. This is the ideal. That is whatever. Because if you're enlightened and you're informed and you understand, then you know how significant Tracy Emin's sordid bed is, so you can go pay £600,000 for it, which somebody did, by the way. So you have to explain. Somebody has to explain on a worldview level, how do we go from that to that? It begs an explanation, does it not? More than that, when this is passed off as liberated and true and good and beautiful, well, they don't really talk about that. Okay, let me give you, spare this now. I want to bomb you with another. I want you to listen carefully to this one here. Here we go.
I imagine.
Very famous movie.
Feeling
Listen.
a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
It's the question that drives us, Neo. It's the question that brought you here.
What is the Matrix? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
This isn't real.
What is real? You think that's air you're breathing now? What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer
Skepticism
system.
coming in.
What are you talking about? What is happening to me?
You are the one, Neo. You may have spent the last few years looking for me, but I've spent my entire life looking for you.
I know what you're trying to do.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo. Free your mind. But I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
There's the skepticism. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson, welcome back. We missed you.
Run, Neo, run. What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
And don't worry about the vase.
What is?
That vase.
I'm sorry.
I said don't worry about it.
Hello, Neo.
What's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are here because Zion is about to be destroyed. But the relevant issue is whether or not you are ready to accept the responsibility for the death of every human being in this world.
What if you're wrong? What if all this, the prophecy, everything is bullshit?
You've never believed in the one.
I still don't. I believe in him.
I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries.
Neo is doing what he believes he must do. As long as there is a single breath in his body, he will not give up. And neither can we.
You know what that means? It's Latin. Means know thyself.
But if you already know, how can I make a choice?
Because you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong.
You're here to try to understand why you made it.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why keep fighting? Believe you're fighting for something, for more than your survival? Can you tell me what it is? Do you even know?
We're all here to do what we're all here to do.
Is it freedom or truth? Perhaps peace? Could it be for love?
It was an honor, sir. No, the honor is still mine.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why do you persist?
Because I choose to.
I have imagined this moment for so long. Is this real?
Powerful, hey? You're stuck here listening to some bald, grumpy old man, and they've got the Matrix and the media. Keanu Reeves. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Why, Mr. Anderson? What are you fighting for? Show them a world without rules and controls and borders and boundaries. How do you know you're not living in a dream? That's a classic question from a philosophy professor to a high school matric. And they go, oh, I don't know. Yeah, and they just got you. Northwest University, you know that conservative school down the road? Transformation document, yeah, decolonization. This applies to all the university. They said that there are social justice is one of the top 10 core values of the African Constitution, describes an ideal type of citizens. What does it really mean? Exactly what does it mean? Well, I can tell you what, it doesn't mean what you and I as Christians think it means. They have a very specific understanding of what social justice means, and what they mean by that is you're going to become a cultural Marxist. That's what they mean by that. You can go through this document now. Let's go to second year university, second year Faculty of Humanities. Okay, they're teaching students on social constructivism. What do you have to do? You have to watch The Matrix. Why? Because you've all been blue-pilled by your pastor and your parents. But don't worry, Northwest University is going to red-pill you so you can understand social constructivism and realize that all those ideas that your mom put in your mind as a young woman about being a woman is false and is really just a function of the patriarchy. There we go. Would you choose to stay in a lulled state of sleep, oblivious to social construct and ideologies? Well, no. So you have to first drink the red pill. We have to be curious. You are wearing the new lenses now, and you can really understand what's going on in South Africa, unlike all of those blind, dumb Christians. Now, it would be most appropriate for them to use the Matrix because the guys who wrote the Matrix are an embodiment of transgender ideology. So it's not illicit. Now, I've ruined the Matrix for many of you now. But what is it all about? It's not about the question of truth. It's about my choice, my lived experience. What's the only thing that matters? I choose. And you affirm. You do what I say. Why? Because this is what I choose. That's what it's all about. How dare you challenge me? And the institutions are going to back that up. And then they lie to students. Now, typically, they're not going to feed it to you with this kind of philosophy because people are going to fall asleep. Who wants to read Hegel's phenomenology? I mean, this stuff is just, it's like sticking pencils in your eyes. They're going to bomb you with this kind of stuff. It's far more, it's more like, this candy floss, folks, it's lekker. Just some lekker Michel Foucault. Bit of Jean-Paul Sartre. And then you're enlightened. But don't forget to say Ubuntu. Remember, just always say Ubuntu at the end of the sentence. Here's how they do that. I get this from my students. If you're in psychology, they bomb you with a gestalt. Who sees the old man? Half the class puts their hand up. Who sees the woman? Half the class. You see? There is no truth out there. There's only your perspective. And they got you, boom, within the first month out of high school, they got you onto the skepticism. Or they'll pitch this to you. I've had this from the students, send this to me. Is it round or square? Well, it depends upon your perspective. There's the perspectivism of Nietzsche. And what has this all led to? We're now in a position where we're out here.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law, and I decide.
Well-
So I'm not,
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Wow. Apparently, the wise people, these limits
Hey, thanks for
are
watching.
telling us that we can't define what a woman is. She is now on the Supreme Court. She's one of the 9 top legal minds in America. She can't give you a definition of a woman. Rhetorically, it was weak. She should have led with this question: do you believe in women's rights? To which she no doubt would have said yes. And then you should have asked her, and what exactly is a woman then? And apparently, this is how black people are meant to think as well. And this comes because Judith Butler, 5 minutes, we're going to wrap up now. So this book here, we're all here in South Africa because they've published their feminist peer-reviewed papers to each other, are now being told that our views of sex and sexuality are wrong and colonialist and oppressive. Because long before the white boys showed up here in Africa, our black brothers and sisters were living in an androgynous utopia, apparently. Now, I'm not an expert in African culture, but I think that that's wrong. I'm pretty convinced that that is not true. But that's what's happening, folks. We've been dancing to the tune of Judith Butler and her friends and her fourth wave feminists. She says it on page 1. What does she say? There's very little agreement after all what it constitutes or ought to constitute the category of woman. And because her and her feminist buddies have written their papers, we all have to toe the line here. And what we've got going on is you've got this poor woman who's been danced by the philosophy department, just like all the other departments. The reason why she can't answer the question is because she's owned by these feminists in the philosophy department. That's why she can't answer the question. My 8-year-old could give you a definition of a woman. That would be fine. And here we have UCT. Disrupting gender. Decolonization necessarily requires degendering. This is the top academic institution in the country. Apparently, we have to degender the nation to get it back and get rid of this colonialist oppressors. Or Stellenbosch University publication, Queer Activism in South African Education, Disrupting Cis Heteronormativity in Schools. That's another thing they've done. They've invented all of this new terminology, like a cult, so that you as a young girl can go into university or guy, and you come back, and now you're using all this new verbiage, you know? All this new language that they've invented, and you talk to your parents and your mom goes, huh? And you go, wow, my professor said that you'll be pretty ignorant, and I've got these really big words that we're using now, like cis heteronormativity, or whatever else your other woke jargon is. This is what's going on, folks. And the young people who are sitting here, if you're in university, this is exactly what's happening. I can see some of you nodding your heads. This is what's going on. And it's a spectacular lie. What does that mean? It means when you come out as a teacher, you go into your schoolroom, and the ideas that mom and dad or the church or somebody else put in there in that little boy's mind, you go and you disrupt it. That's exactly what that means. You become an activist at school, not an educator. You become a revolutionary. You're not teaching them anything. You're teaching them liberation. And I could go on and on and on. So third year, quickly here. Third year educational. What are they going to teach you? Critical theory. A little bit of Karl Marx with some Jean-Paul Sartre, a little dose of Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida, and a bit of Paulo Freire. There we go. There's the educational philosophy for you. Just make sure you say, what at the end of the sentence? Ubuntu. Yeah.